Thank you. Thank you very much, Shida. I probably should start already opening today's panel. Today we gathered to talk more about the campaign to establish International Anti-Corruption Court. My name is Tina Buladze. I am member of the Integrity Initiative International's Youth Leaders Network, and I'm also president of Fordham International Law Association, doing masters in Fordham University as a scholar. It is my honor to moderate today this panel as we are talking about a very important campaign that has been ongoing for quite a while. We have leaders and main supporters of this campaign today talking about Global Anti-Corruption Court. Our speakers include Justice Goldstone, as well as President of Slovenia, former President of Slovenia, Danilo Turk, who will be opening today's panel. He was the President of Slovenia from 2007 to 2012. He is nowadays President of Club de Madrid. He is PhD in international law and has a lot of experience in practicing and also implementing international legal rules. He was UN Special Rapporteur on the realization of economic, social, and cultural rights. He was the first permanent representative of Slovenia in United Nations in New York. President was also invited by Kofi Annan, then Secretary General of the UN, to serve as UN Assistant to Secretary General. This is very short introduction, and I will move to introducing Honorable Richard Goldstone, who was the former South African judge and nowadays chair of the Integrity Initiatives International. We have honor to have his remarks in the opening statement and also as a panelist. And we're gonna have also Prime Minister of Mali, former Prime Minister and also member of Club de Madrid, presenting now. For us, he was the youngest to hold the position of Prime Minister at the age of 39 in Mali. He is expert accountant. He attended New School of Business Management and many other affiliations that the list goes on. We also have Ms. Rafi Tosun, Executive Director of Transparency International Madagascar. She is human rights lawyer and pro-democracy activist. She is Executive Director of Transparency International Madagascar. She is the founder of Civic Movement Liberty 32 and Wake Up Madagascar, and the founder of the Learning Initiative Aiming at Nonviolent Actions project, which teaches civic resistance techniques to Malagasy people. The list also goes on for Ms. Rafi Tosun. Now I would like to open the floor to distinguished President Turk for us. And probably we would be delighted to hear his remarks about why Club de Madrid decided to back the creation of the IACC and how you look at the whole process of helping to promote democracy and build trust in democratic governance. Thank you very much, Honorable President Turk. We are happy to open this panel with you.
Well, thank you very much, and let me be fairly brief because we have many interesting speakers who will have much more to say than I can. I would like to tell you that I am connecting with you from Chengdu in China, and I hope that technically everything will work. It is working now, and I'm very optimistic that it will work for the rest of the panel as well. What I would like to say simply is to re-emphasize once again, corruption on a grand scale is a major threat to democracy. It's a major threat to democracy, and it has to be addressed. I'm saying this because Club de Madrid is an organization which was created to fight for democracy and to try to strengthen democracy. Now, we've seen that democracy nowadays is facing, as the diplomats would say, very serious challenges. You know, this is one of those understatements which do not explain very much. But if we want to go more deeply into the whole debate about challenges to democracy, we have to list corruption very high on the list of those challenges, or I would say threats. Corruption erodes public trust, erodes the justice system, has a very harmful effect on the quality of people, and it affects indirectly, at least, political stability of the country affected by grand corruption. So it has to be addressed. And we have been seeing that the international community has not done very much in that regard. I have to say, of course, UN Convention Against Corruption was an achievement, that this continues to be an important legal framework, but it is more of a conceptual matter than an effective instrument. And the question is, what else needs to be done, and how do we approach this else? Therefore, it is not surprising then when the initiative for the International Anti-Corruption Court started that many Club de Madrid members were immediately in favor, because we want to have this discussion, and we want that discussion to produce serious, meaningful, effective results. This is the main motivation for Club de Madrid's involvement. In addition, I would like to recall that when the United States initiated at the beginning of the Biden presidency the idea of reviving or once again convening the Summit of Democracies, we were thinking, all right, what should be the priorities of that process? And we again thought that fighting corruption would be should be a major aspect of any discussion on democracy which pretends to be serious. We have therefore joined forces with not only the initiators of the International Court Against Corruption, but we also worked with Canada, Netherlands, and other countries which have also seen the need to fighting corruption as a priority for democracy. So this is something from, I shouldn't say history, something of the current motivation and current interest in moving this process forward. We see that there are new developments taking place, some of which we learn about, but we do not know enough about, including the new initiatives within Africa. They are very important. And we would like to say that, of course, it would be interesting to learn from our panel much more about what is happening in that regard. It being fully understood, and let me emphasize this, that Africa is not a particularly important, single priority for fighting democracy. Of course, for fighting corruption. Corruption is, of course, in Africa, but corruption is everywhere else as well, and we should be very careful to make sure that this is properly understood. And to conclude, I would only say that we are very lucky to have Judge Goldstone with us. He has been a very strong voice, continues to be a very strong voice, and also a very competent voice in the fighting corruption. And of course, it would be very important to hear from him about the current state of activities, challenges, and of course, what a broader group like the one that we probably represent can do at this point. This is what I would like to say by way of introduction, and I look forward to a very active discussion of this panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, President Turuk. It's been fascinating to hear from you. And it is very true that corruption is not only in Africa, but it is the global issue, and we need to addressing this with global mindset. And I think this is what this webinar is also serves, and this initiative. And now I want to give the floor to Justice Goldstone, our very own leader, advocate for IACC, chair of the Model Treaty Drafting Project. Now, Mr. Goldstone, we would love to hear more about what you think, why IACC is so much important now in the world, and what IACC could do, and what are the next steps with drafting a model treaty and campaign for the court's creation. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Tintin, for giving me this opportunity and for introducing the panel. I would like initially to thank the Club of Madrid and particularly
I think, Justice Goston, you're muted.
I'm at a holiday hotel about 2 hours from Cape Town, and I hope the connection remains a good one. I was saying I'm very grateful to the Club of Madrid, and particularly for President Turk, to President Turk for having opened these proceedings and for joining us. It's a wonderful privilege and opportunity to work as a partner with the Club of Madrid on the IACC. Let me begin by trying to set the context of the International Anti-Corruption Court. In developing countries, it has been conservatively estimated over 10 times more money is lost to illicit financial flows than is received in foreign aid. As long ago as 2013, the then UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Navi Pillay, said, and I quote her, she said, "Corruption kills. The money stolen through corruption every year is enough to feed the world's hungry 80 times over. Corruption denies them their right to food and in some cases their right to life." Since then, since Navi Pillay said that 10 years ago, the amounts lost to corruption have risen sharply. It must thus be recognized that grand corruption or kleptocracy, that is corruption by heads of state and other senior state officials, is very much a human rights issue. Grand corruption also contributes to climate change and is a major impediment to ameliorating it. For example, kleptocrats profit greatly from illicit forestry trade. It's estimated to be worth in excess of $100 billion annually, and likely much more. The primary recipients of government climate-related development aid includes countries that are perceived as being the most corrupt in the world. Unless something significant is done to deter grand corruption, a large percentage of the billions of dollars in aid intended to diminish climate change will be misappropriated by kleptocrats and their collaborators. So it is well to recognize that grand corruption, in addition to being a human rights issue, is also a climate change issue. The legions of refugees who are overwhelming countries in the Americas and Europe have been fleeing failed states ruled by kleptocrats. These include Syria, Venezuela, and South Sudan. Any effort to alleviate the world's refugee crises must therefore address a fundamental cause of forced migration, grand corruption. So corruption is thus also a refugee issue. The Pandora Papers, published in 2021 by the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists, the ICIJ, provide additional compelling evidence that corrupt leaders throughout the world, aided and abetted by domestic and international accomplices, enrich themselves at the expense of the health and welfare of their often desperate citizens. They secretly use the international banking system to move their substantial ill-gotten gains to foreign countries. The Pandora Papers expose the secret finances and lavish lifestyles of more than 330 politicians, including 35 then current and former heads of state. I should add that many of them did not relate to ill-gotten gains. The Pandora Papers were followed by the ICIJ's Panama and Paradise Papers, which provides similar evidence of grand corruption. Because grand corruption pollutes the international financial system and has other severe international consequences, it is not just a domestic issue or domestic problem for individual countries to address alone. Rather, it is a global problem, as was indicated by President Turk. It's a global problem that requires a global solution. Raymond Baker is quoted in the invitation to today's proceedings. As appears from the quotation, The outflows of illicit monies from Africa are in excess of $100 billion a year. Grant corruption, I would emphasize, does not exist because of a lack of anti-corruption laws. Almost all of the 185 UN member states that are party to the United Nations Convention Against Corruption, UNCAC, have enacted the required statutes criminalizing bribery, money laundering, and the misappropriation of national resources. However, some states that are party to UNCAC are governed by kleptocrats who enjoy impunity in the countries they rule because they control the police, the prosecutors, and even the courts. Some of those authorities themselves are also corrupt. Those kleptocrats will not permit honest, effective investigation of themselves or their criminal collaborators. And we must not forget the criminal co-conspirators around the world, the banks, law firms, real estate agencies, and other financial service providers who aid and abet kleptocrats in the transnational crime of money laundering. So that is the broad context in which there is a developing effort to establish the International Anti-Corruption Court, the IACC. As a Vice Chair of Integrity Initiatives International, or III, I'm an ardent advocate for the creation of an International Anti-Corruption Court. Such a court would hold kleptocrats, the highest state officials, and those who collude with them, accountable when national authorities are unable or unwilling to do so. The scarce resources that would be available to such a court will necessitate that its jurisdiction be limited to grand corruption or kleptocracy, the plunder and stealth of public assets by heads of state and other high officials, and those who collude with and enable them. The envisioned court would have jurisdiction over crimes committed by nationals of an IACC member state and crimes committed in the territory of an IACC member state. The court would have no need to invent any new crimes of corruption. It would rely on those crimes already recognized by the 185 states that, as I have mentioned, have ratified UNCAC. Those crimes have in effect, therefore, become internationalized. They are international crimes. They include the bribery of public officials, embezzlement, and other misappropriation of public funds, money laundering, and the obstruction of justice in relation to those offences. The IACC would be a court of last resort. This means that it would acquire jurisdiction only in cases in which the appropriate domestic authorities are unable or unwilling to investigate or prosecute the corruption. Member states would also be able to refer cases to the IACC. It would be an institution able to offer what could be crucial assistance, for example, to states that are willing to investigate and prosecute the corrupt leaders, but do not have the resources to do so on their own. The IACC's expert investigators and prosecutors could be called upon for assistance by prosecuting authorities in such countries. At least one such transitional country has already endorsed the establishment of the IACC. Its personnel could work with nascent islands of integrity in their country to help build its cases. That could include facilitating mutual legal assistance requests that are required to obtain evidence located in foreign jurisdictions. You may well ask how the IACC could help prevent impunity for leaders implicated in corruption. Of course, we must recognize that the kleptocrats will not allow their countries to join the International Anti-Corruption Court. Indeed, they will do everything in their power to hamper investigations into their own criminality. But they have an Achilles heel. They have a crucial weakness. Their laundered illicit funds. For obvious reasons, few, if any, kleptocrats keep their ill-gotten gains at home. It is too risky. Billions of dollars of stolen assets have been laundered in a number of countries. They include the United Arab Emirates, the Netherlands, Singapore, Switzerland, the United States, the United Kingdom and its overseas territories, the Cayman Islands, and there are a number of others. In some of the countries where laundered funds are held, If some of the countries where laundered funds are held would join an IACC, and then illicit assets could be identified and frozen by the court. And some of those countries are indeed considering joining us. Through orders of restitution, those funds could be repatriated to the countries from which they are stolen. If there is a high risk of those funds being misused, if returned to a corrupted state, they could be repurposed for refugee or humanitarian purposes, or repatriated only at a time when they would reach the real victims, the millions in need in those countries and their forced diasporas. The IACC would play an important part in assisting smaller states that wish to investigate past acts of kleptocracy, but lack the capacity to do so. In such instances, the IACC could help build domestic prosecutions by, for example, facilitating evidence gathering across borders, providing mutual legal assistance and expertise. In instances where the judicial system is too corrupt to handle the cases, or maybe simply does not have the capacity to hear complex transnational cases, then such willing but unable states may wish to refer cases to the courtroom of the IACC. We know that many states like Moldova have gathered evidence with international assistance, but lack the domestic capacity to prosecute, and so they seek third-party states to take on their cases. The IACC could provide and would provide such a venue for these complicated cases. III is presently drafting a model treaty for the establishment of the IACC. We are learning many lessons from former and existing international criminal courts, and especially the ICC, the International Criminal Court. We have concluded, just to give one example, that the IACC would not require a system of pre-trial chambers. In the case of the ICC, they proved to be an expensive and time-consuming process. They were not a feature of other successful international criminal courts. There are other ways in which the IACC could be more cost-effective than the ICC, including, as one example, only employing a small number of permanent judges. Other vetted and approved judges could be called upon only when the caseload requires their services. Regardless, the operational cost of the IACC would constitute a small fraction of the amount of illicit assets that it could seize and return to their originally intended purpose, the public good. In addition to orders of restitution, it could levy fines on those found guilty, and these could be used to defray some of its costs. Another innovation we are considering is having a two-chamber court. There would be a criminal chamber and a civil chamber. The criminal chamber would have jurisdiction over the kleptocrats and other high officials who have plundered their countries, and those complicit with them, those who facilitate the plunder and laundering of the stolen assets. The second chamber would be a civil chamber that would have authority to freeze and seize the laundered stolen assets and hold them until they can be returned to the real owners, the people of the countries who have been robbed. The civil chamber could also resolve the inevitable disputes that are likely to arise with regard to identifying the laundered funds and determining their fate. Our drafting committees are fortunate to have as members leading experts on relevant international criminal law from around the world, many of them, I'm happy to say, from African countries. Our meetings are being hosted by a German foundation, the New Institute Foundation in Hamburg. We met there last August, and we meet again next month and at the end of this August. It is our expectation that a model draft treaty for the IACC will be completed before the end of the current year. The jurists, lawyers, and scholars and anti-corruption experts in attendance last August came from Trinidad and Tobago, Nigeria, Brazil, Cameroon, Bangladesh, and Mexico, as well as the United States, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. We are presently taking steps to encourage more jurists from civil law systems to join us in drafting the model treaty. III has established an African subcommittee that meets every month, being co-chaired by Coogan Pillay, a leading South African crusader for justice and accountability, and Lanre Siraju, a courageous anti-corruption activist from Nigeria who runs the Header Resource Center. The committee's members include leaders of some of the African chapters of Transparency International. We also have a growing group of young supporters from a number of countries around the world, including Africa. Even in the current initial phases of the drafting process, we welcome informal consultation with interested government and civil society stakeholders. Anyone on this webinar is welcome to reach out to III and to Ian Lynch in particular if they would like to get involved to any degree that they are able. There are now over 300 leading figures from across the world, including more than 50 heads of state and prime ministers and 32 Nobel laureates who have signed a declaration calling for the creation of the IACC. Colombia was the first country to call for an IACC back in 2016. More recently, the Netherlands, Canada, Nigeria, Moldova, and Ecuador have committed to working towards the creation of the court. In January of this year, the European Parliament passed a resolution calling for the IACC. Additional countries from each region of the world have also expressed their interest in the idea. The United Kingdom Labour Party announced in July of last year that it will champion the IACC idea, and there is further cross-party support for the court in the UK. Apart from Nigeria, there is strong interest from governments in Senegal, Zambia, and Côte d'Ivoire. It is important that South Africa should be added to this list of interested African governments. There is substantial civil society interest in the IACC from across the African continent. So let me end by saying that the effort to create the IACC will take some time, but the momentum generated in the past 2 years suggests that it may be possible sooner than even its strongest proponents think. The time is right now to strengthen the proposal so that the eventual court can provide us as meaningful as possible a check on corruption. I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Justice Goldstone. It's been fascinating to listen to your remarks. You were absolutely right to mention that corruption is one of the main sins of the world, as it is intertwined with human rights issues, climate change, and economic and social well-being of the world's people. Indeed, grand corruption poses the main threat to democracies. And while there is anti-corruption rules nationally, as well as there is international frameworks, we face issues of impunity, accountability, and lack of political will. And on behalf of a youth generation, I really want to thank you for everything that you do for this initiative. And today's synergy between you and the support of Club de Madrid are absolutely crucial in this noble endeavor. And with this, I would like to invite former Prime Minister Mara, youngest Prime Minister of Mali, to present his thoughts about current frameworks of the anti-corruption matters and what he feels that needs to be done more to support this noble initiative.
Thank you, Ms. Tinatine. Hello, everyone. I would like to thank the Club de Madrid for this invitation and take part on this important panel. And I will not be very, very long. I have some few words to add to what have been said by the former panelists. The first thing is, in my country now, I am in Bamako, the capital city of Mali, and we are living under a huge power cut. And this power cut has a huge impact on the connection. I am not sure even if my connection will afford the entire panel. And one of the reasons of this power cut is the bad governance of our public company in charge of electricity. And the issue of corruption is the main issue of this bad governance. That shows the importance and how impactful is corruption on our lives everywhere, not only in Africa, but everywhere. The problem in Africa is we have a very few money for our budget, and $1 embezzled it will be more impactful in Africa than other part of the world due to the shortage of resources and financial resources. Exactly. That's why when we talk about corruption, nearly we talk about Africa, because the impact of corruption in Africa is forcibly higher elsewhere. This is the first thing I would like to put the light on. The second is, and during my different speeches in our country and outside, I regularly say corruption is worse than terrorism for our country. Corruption is more destructive than terrorism. Embezzling public money and using this public money on the bad way prevents a lot of using which can save lives, which can give opportunities to young, opportunities to people for education, health, access to water, access to electricity, as I said, and different other opportunities. And that costs lives, a lot of lives. That's why, for me, corruption is the main issue in our country. The first top fight to manage in our country. First and most important than fighting against corruption. This is the main reason why I am a supporter of this initiative of international court against corruption, and I fully support that. And my personal experience as an auditor, charter accountant, and I face to different type and different kind of bad using of public money and corruption. And I am sure this initiative, if it succeeds, will to fight efficiently against corruption. This is the first thing I would like to say. The second is, inside our countries, we have laws, rules, we have courts, we have procedures, but this system suffers a lot of weaknesses. The first is the political will, as the former panelist said. The second is the relative independence of our judges vis-a-vis to politicians. The judicial system, the justice system in our countries, and I think it is the case of all developing countries and all poor countries, there is a lot of weaknesses. There is a lot of weaknesses. And to have a possibility to fight against corruption, to judge case in the international way, given a new opportunity and a new chance to be efficient on this field, the field of fighting against corruption. That's why, for me, international court is a necessity for everyone. It is a necessity for sure for Africa. And I advise this must be skillful for not only for fighting against corruption, but we need to add the embezzlement of all public resources. Corruption is something in the legal way which could be too precise, and some other bad using of public money and public resources could not be defined as a corruption. I think we need to unlock the scope of the international courts in order to touch all embezzlement of public resources, and especially the hidden of public money in the tax haven. And we need to talk about that, and we need maybe to put this skill to the international court. Our countries in Africa, we suffer a lot from the hidden of public money embezzled to small islands in some oceans, like a tax haven. We need to fight really against the principle of tax havens. And I think this international court should work on that. The principle of international court, I think, is real, and we all need and should support it. The question will be how to move forward, how to progress. And for me, we need to touch civil society leaders, it is true, but political leaders also. Acting leader, even oppositions, all political leaders and the big political leader, we need to touch them inside the countries to get their support for this way. This is one thing I would like to advise. The second is the institutional action is not avoidable. We need the support of institutions in our countries, government, institution in charge of good governance, transparency, fighting against corruption, institution in charge of control. We need all support inside the country in the institutional way, because the opportunity to settle this court will be given by government, by states, and the support of state is absolutely necessary to progress on this way. We need to work on that. And former leaders, that's why for me, Club de Madrid will be useful as well, is the former leaders around the world would be very, very efficient on this way. Due to their relationship, their experiences, their networks, we need to use all of this scope of people, institutions, actors inside the country to support this project and to make it successful. The last thing I would like to say is the countries mentioned on the document in Africa. I would like to add some other countries like Morocco. I think Morocco could be positive. Even DRC. DRC is a very huge country in Africa who suffers a lot from corruption and other kind of bad governance, but the political will now seems real in DRC, and this huge country will be positive. And some other country in Africa known as very, very transparent, like Mauritius, Cabo Verde. These countries also need to be added to the list given on the document. I would like to propose that on this way. This is the different few things and few words I would like to put the light on and to say I am totally available for this fight, because I know it is impactful for us and it will be matter for our future as a country and as a continent, for sure. Thank you to invite me on this panel, and I stay on your disposal. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister Mara. It was fascinating to listen to your courageous remarks that you're ready to further contribute to this important goal that we are working on together. It's very true that corruption is more destructive for African countries, and mainly because it directly affects people's lives, and especially the basic human rights, including right to life. And this naturally brings me to our next speaker, Ms. Rafitason. She is human rights lawyer and democratic activist, and we would love to hear from her her thoughts about how we can further contribute to the goal of eradicating corruption in the world.
Thank you so much for having me, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure for me to speak to you today. I'm speaking from Lusaka in Zambia, where we are holding the International Anti-Corruption Conference, the other IACC for Africa. So we are here, 36 representatives of different countries, anti-corruption fighters from Transparency International mainly, and discussing all of these issues that Prime Minister Mara just exposed. But, you know, we are living this on a daily basis. Corruption is not only ruining lives, it's ruining the environment. It is at the core heart of the climate change. It is everywhere, and it is pervasive. And I will be very concrete in sharing my insights about why I am supporting the creation of this court. I am also the Vice Chair of Transparency International, but today I will be speaking in my capacity as the Executive Director of Transparency International Madagascar, as our movement for now doesn't have yet a common position on the IACC. But most of African chapters of TI are supporting the creation of this court. Why? Just because our system, our judicial system is not working nationally. There are lots of legal instruments. You all know the legal framework around corruption and anti-corruption worldwide. We do have the IACC. We have our own anti-corruption convention in Africa. There are a lot more of national instruments, laws, decrees against corruption. And there is a lot of commitment made by, I would say, politicians and duty bearers, those in power. In Madagascar, for instance, I will give you an example. We have a president who just re-elected himself through electoral corruption, and who is now making the commitment to fight against corruption. But how can we, you know, give credit to this kind of word when corruption has been used to gain power? So that's a problem. And as I said, the judiciary is not independent. It's not only in Madagascar, but it's a kind of generality across Africa, unfortunately. Therefore, we need more. We need more than commitments, and we need another supra-level instrument, a court which will help us to fight against corruption and to punish, if I may say so, the kleptocrats or the corrupt rulers who are ruining not only our continent, but the world. Because all of the conflicts and the wars that we are witnessing today is also fueled by corruption. I will give you a concrete case that we have lived in Madagascar. In 2022, we blew the whistle on a monopoly on the lychee trade. You know, the lychee, the small red fruit that some of you may see in your countries during Christmas time. We are producing this in Madagascar. And there is a trade with the European Union. And then through our chapter in TI Madagascar, we discovered that there was a monopoly in the exportation of this fruit to the European Union. And all of this is nurtured by grand corruption. And then we blew the whistle, not only in Madagascar, but also in France, because this is a transnational organized crime and also corruption. What happened is I have been summoned by the police at the national level because we exposed that case of grand corruption, then facing the prosecutor and being labeled, you know, for defamation and the spread of false news. Well, we had evidence of this. But in France, the case is moving, but slowly. And what we would like to see is, you know, an accelerated process of bringing justice against those who are doing corruption and who are ruining our poor small farmers locally. We need strong sanctions, and we do believe that those strong sanctions right now will come only from the IACC if it is put into place. So, you know, that's experience from the field, I will say, and I know that many of my counterparts within the TI movement, especially in developing countries, will think the same. We have the feeling that those who are lucky enough to live in countries where the judiciary system is working are not really supporting the creation of the IACC, because for them, everything is perfect. It's like attending the CUSP 10 in Atlanta, for instance, the Conference of State Parties to the UNCAC. When you listen to all the discourse and speeches from government representatives, you have the feeling that everything is doing fine in the anti-corruption world, but it's not. We need more. So having this court will be really something concrete beyond commitments, beyond speeches, and we are waiting for it. I have been joining the African subcommittee of AAA on preparing, working around this initiative, and I'm really thankful for Justice Goldstone's leadership on that and of his team. We are ready to convince more civil society organizations to join that fight and the campaign. But as Prime Minister said, we also need to convince more politicians, more of like-minded people around the world, and I do believe that they exist and they are ready to fight with us, but they need the information first. And this is why I'm very thankful for this opportunity for us to speak today and to share our experience. And I commend the work that you are doing. Wishing best of luck to the campaign. I'm very sorry I won't be able to stand till the end of the meeting because we are also still in the middle of the conference and I have another presentation to give. But I will be happy to keep in touch with all of you as needed and wishing the best of luck to this campaign once again. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Rafitoson. It's been amazing to hear your remarks. And I can just briefly say that it is very true that strong sanctions is something that we all need, and more effective international legal order that is responsive. And I think we always need to remind the states that sovereignty comes with rights, yes, but also with responsibilities, and they need to be accountable for what they are planting. Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure to be able to join this forum, albeit belatedly. A few points. I have listened to just the last contribution, and when I hear the word anti-corruption and democracy being spoken in the same sentence, two things jump to mind. First of all, what happens to the sovereignty of independent sovereign states, and the idea of this court not being an imposition, it's an alternative. At least that's how I understand it. So that jumps at you, and if we start putting some condition to membership of the court or support of the court, then it's going to start to look like an imposition. So that's just a point I just want to add, just in reaction to the last contribution. Very quickly, I am an avid supporter of this court, this proposal. I don't know how many people know about my background. I'm a former international prosecutor from the Rwanda Tribunal. I spent 12 years prosecuting the worst crimes known to mankind with great success. And after that, I decided to return to Nigeria to contribute my own quota to nation building. And I was appointed special prosecutor to investigate and corrupt the highest ranking judicial officers in my country. It's completely unprecedented, never been done before. And I wasn't terribly successful at doing that for various reasons: political interference and the abuse of prosecutorial discretion. Having gone through that, I realized that there had to be some other mechanism to hold corrupt public office holders accountable for their alleged criminal conduct. And when I say alleged, when I say public office holders, I also mean members of the business community from all over the world, because they are the enablers. I mean, there's very little proceeds from corruption that remain in Nigeria. That's part of the problem. The money leaves the country by way of capital flight. And you must have heard of the Abacha proceedings in Switzerland, and we have several others in the UK, where we've gone to great lengths to recover billions and billions and billions of dollars owed to Nigeria as a country, and where the social infrastructure, or the lack thereof of social infrastructure in my country, has been the bane of corruption. I live it every day. I smell it every day. I see it on the streets. You know, with no hospitals, no electricity, no infrastructure. Yes, I'm sitting in a posh office like this, but I probably account for 0.1% of the average Nigerian. So basically, I am passionate about this, but I also, in being so passionate, I also realize, based on my experience of prosecuting international crimes, that there will be challenges. There will be challenges to the effective operation of this court. What stands out for me about this court? First, the ability of this court to apply existing domestic law, domestic anti-graft law. That's a huge advantage in my view. Secondly, the mobility of this court, the prospect of this court being able to move around the world from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. The ability of victims of large-scale crimes such as this, corruption, to be able to follow the proceedings is important to healing. I know that from prosecuting genocide. There's no point a court sitting all the way in The Hague when crimes took place in some far nation in Africa, and victims are not able to follow the process. And people don't realize how important that is to the whole process of reconciliation and the whole process of healing. What are the challenges, very quickly? I see challenges as being political, and I've heard talk about that already in the last 10 minutes. I see challenges being procedural, and I see challenges being operational. What is the political challenge in my view? Well, we have to be able to discuss what happens to the recovered stolen assets from the victim countries. I am from a victim country. I live in a victim country, and I can well assure you that most victim countries, the first question they're going to ask is, when am I going to get my money back? And how am I going to get my money back? Well, and that's really because criminal prosecutions and convictions are not likely to build schools and hospitals and roads and provide social infrastructure in victim countries. So the very first thing that's going to be thrown at us is, can we get our money back? This court must have some process to be able to deal with disputes between victim countries and countries where money has been warehoused as to the repatriation of stolen assets. That's very, very important. I think that issue has been flagged by the president of my country. I give you a very quick quote from President Buhari of Nigeria. David Cameron was speaking to the monarch of the UK and describing Nigeria and Afghanistan as being the most fantastically corrupt countries in the world. And Buhari was asked by the press.
As we are reaching the end of the session, and thank you again, Maria Elena, President Turk, Nuria, Club de Madrid, everyone who's helped put this together. Justice Goldstone.
So thank you very much. I would just compliment the organizers of the webinar. It's been a very rich and useful discussion, and I think we've all learned a great deal from it. I just want to make one concluding remark, and that is from my experience with international criminal justice, and particularly the ad hoc tribunals for the former Yugoslavia, Rwanda, but also the ICC, civil society has played the crucial role. Without strong support and push from civil society, there wouldn't have been the political will on the part of many governments who made it possible for these international criminal institutions to exist. And if the IACC is to be set up, we will in the same way require the strong support from civil society. As has been indicated, sorry, my connection failed in the middle of my remarks, but I think I had virtually concluded before losing connection, indicating the importance of political will and the role in generating that political will by civil society. That's for that reason that I particularly am very, very particularly delighted at some of the members of civil society who've joined us on the webinar and who, as Ian Lynch has indicated, have joined us in III in pushing for the creation of an international anti-corruption court. Thank you very much.
And for organizing this amazing webinar, Integrity Initiatives International, as well as Club de Madrid. It's been fascinating to moderate and to listen to your amazing remarks today. With this, we will wrap up today's webinar and looking forward to next occasions to talk more about creation and strengthening global anti-corruption court. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tina team. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Nice meeting you all. Thank you.